It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is the Comptroller of the state of Maryland, Peter Franchot, re-elected in 2018 with 72.1% of the vote. He's held this position for quite a long time. He was elected as Maryland's Comptroller originally on Tuesday, November 6th, 2006. He's a Democrat and occupies an increasingly rare space of bipartisan politician that is popular among voters from both parties, for the most part. Born in Connecticut, went to Phillips Academy in Andover, Army from 1968 to 1970, Amherst College thereafter, then Northeastern School of Law. Married to Ann, lawyer. You have two children, Abigail and Nick, and you live in Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Donna.
Thanks for joining me today. One of the ways I start off with interviews from people that I have never met before, and I don't know why we've never met before, but we haven't, is I want to know who you are in order so that we understand where you come from and where you are on some of these positions that you've taken as comptroller of the state. Favorite book, favorite movie, and favorite song?
Yeah, well, just to let you know who I am and where I'm coming from, and I've been totally consistent in my career, and I think it's why I have a certain connection with the voters that I'm privileged and honored to have. But basically, I represent people on the outside who are looking in on either Washington or Annapolis, scratching their heads, wondering why the politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, aren't doing more to help them, their small businesses, their daily lives, their interactions with their kids who are in school. So I've developed a tradition of being an outsider, criticizing where appropriate of what the insiders are doing, because often what goes on in Annapolis and Washington has nothing to do with the better intentions for the state of Maryland or for the country. So that's kind of who I am. I started out as a legislator 33 years ago, and I was running against the big banks. Now I'm battling against the big brewing companies, but it's all oriented towards protecting the little guys.
And we'll get to that in a minute.
What's a book that I think is...
Because I think this speaks to who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And it gets
can I be candid and just say that when I was a kid, you mentioned Andover, I used to sit in the library up there and just laugh uproariously in the reading room, because I had this huge kind of valuable historic edition of Don Quixote. And I thought that book was just about as good as it gets.
Chasing Windmills.
Don Quixote. No, he had a few successes in that too.
No doubt.
The other book I love is Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who, if anyone... He happened to be a great French writer who was shot down and killed when he was fighting against the Nazis. But he wrote this lovely book about friendship and loyalty, and that's, I think, one of my favorite books. I read a lot of books, and I'm currently halfway through the new biography of Winston Churchill, who was a favorite historical figure. So what was it? Book and what?
Movie? Song? Movie.
God.
Okay.
No, movie. Well,
let's go with movie.
Songs, any song by a troubadour who I really love, Van Morrison. He's a little bit of a curmudgeon, but he's a masterful both musician. I heard him out at the Jiffy Lube concert area out in Virginia a couple of months ago. And he's, getting on in age, but he's got an incredibly tight band. And he's a troubadour in the true sense. He sings songs that says something to ordinary people. He's apt to just stop in the middle of a concert and get up and leave. That's how ornery he is. But I like him for his creativity, his ability to have a long career, and the lyrics that he writes. Movie, I'm not the best at movies. I always like these action movies, like Braveheart, I guess, or whatever that movie was about William Wallace. I love that. But currently I'm watching Fauda, F-A-U-D-A, on Netflix, and I encourage all your listeners to take a look at it. It's about Israel and Palestinians and has lots of action in it, and it's kind of my kind of movie.
All right. Privileged upbringing, you would say, yeah?
Absolutely.
And from there, Army, how did that happen?
That happened because I dropped out of college to help Gene McCarthy in 1967, who was running for president of the United States against the Vietnam War, which I, like most everybody of similar age back in 67, 68, opposed. And I unintentionally gave up my student deferment when I dropped out to work for McCarthy in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. I ended up working all over the country for him, but in July I had to go into,
you were
I was drafted into the military. And so US 52, 77, 45, 20, sir, I got my head shaved. I was the only person in my basic training company that had any college experience. So I was immediately singled out as college boy, even though I had 1 year. And
MOS?
MOS was 81 Bravo or Alpha. It was a forward artillery observer. Bad to have if you wanted to have a long life. Mm-hmm. I often say that basic training was my school of hard knocks, and it proved to be enormously beneficial, and I hated every minute of it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I agree with you on every part.
Yeah.
Hard, but made it through, and different time period.
The military gave me structure and some sense of discipline, even though I was a typical clueless kid.
And do you think that's part of the reason why you do stick up for the underdog in some of the things that you do?
Yeah,
because you worked with people that you wouldn't have been exposed to at Phillips or at...
No, you're very perceptive, because even at Phillips, I bump into people that were behind me at Phillips, and I had a reputation. I was a kind of a person that had a certain amount of stature because I happened to be a good athlete. But I always stuck up for the little person, the people that, those Darwinian prep school experiences where the little guy gets picked on, and I always stuck up for them. And I often hear from some of the people who were not in my class but were younger than me. So I have this instinct of sticking up for the little guy, and it's pretty much colored completely my political career. We're
going to take a short break. We'll be right back with the Comptroller of the State of Maryland, Peter Franchot. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is the Comptroller of the State of Maryland, Peter Franchot. What is the Comptroller? What are you responsible for?
I, by Constitution, was set up back in the day when the state was bankrupt, thanks to the treasurer and all sorts of wheeling and dealing and self-interested conflicts. So the state was bankrupt, so they created a constitutional position called the Comptroller to oversee the financial affairs of the state. So I am the chief fiscal officer. I collect all the taxes. I sit on the board of trustees of the State Retirement Commission. I sit on the Board of Public Works, which is a very important 3-member panel that votes on all the state's big contracts. So I, for better or for worse, am in the Constitution as the kind of fiscal steward of the state.
Some of your things that you've stuck up for, you advocate for, air conditioning in Baltimore schools. You weren't originally on board with loving the idea of casinos in the state. Is that true?
Correct.
And you are an advocate for the craft beer industry. Craft beer is not Budweiser. It's not the big names. Craft beer is the local brewery down the street that's trying to make a space for themselves in this very competitive industry. Yes?
Right. Well, let me just tick off one of those issues, the air conditioning issue. There are 50,000 kids in the Baltimore City and Baltimore County region who go to school in schools that do not have climate control. In the winter, they're freezing. In the warmer days, they're sweltering. And when I first brought this up and said, I think the state needs to deal with this, I got all sorts of pushback from the Annapolis machine down here saying, no, the county executive up there is Democratic. He's a really good guy, and you really have to kind of keep your nose out of that. It's very embarrassing for that. It's a unique thing. Everywhere else in the state, Donna, everybody's got climate-controlled, air-conditioned classrooms, and why wouldn't they? It's 2019.
Right.
But up there, they had some anomaly where they don't have them. Mm-hmm. And so I agitated on the Board of Public Works and said, we got to get this. And I kept getting pushback saying, oh, no, you're bothering the local Democratic establishment up there. Could you please shut up? No. I want to stand up and speak out for these kids and their teachers. They're affected. Their health is affected. And, I got blown off when Martin O'Malley was the governor. But then along comes Governor Hogan, who's a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and he turns out to be an adult. And he says, yeah, this is a problem. We're going to fix it. And we've made a lot of progress, but we still continue to,
There's more work to be done.
There's more work to be done, but the legislature has proven in their inimitable way of being completely obstructionist. And they've stripped the Board of Public Works of oversight over school construction, for example, if you can believe it, as a result of that one issue. Well, we're still going to make progress because the legislature can't control, obviously, the governor and the comptroller. And so we're making progress up there. I hope in a year or two we'll have everything air-conditioned and or heated. This
legislative session has not been without controversy, you might know. Your advocacy for the craft beer industry has caused some heat.
Correct.
Yeah. Is there any hope that this is going to be solved?
Yes, the legislature is right in the process of passing the crucial first step, and I applaud the craft brewers for managing to stay with it, and very happy for them. All we're trying to do is level the playing field between the big beer companies out of state and the in-state wonderful Maryland breweries that, as we know, employ Marylanders, use Maryland agricultural products, are owned by Maryland families, and produce great products. Well, we had to blast with dynamite through the special interests that dominate this issue in the legislature, and I'm happy to report that there are the first positive steps are being made in that direction. No good deed goes unpunished. You mentioned the legislation the Speaker of the House is pushing fervently. It's his number one priority, as far as I can tell, and the Senate President, to strip the law enforcement division away from my agency.
You could understand the appearance of impropriety with taking money from the liquor industry on the one side, and which many politicians do.
Yeah, but look, here's the situation on that. They also put in something that said, the comptroller will not be allowed to take any campaign contributions. I'm more than happy to sign off on that, as long as they include themselves, because they are the people in the legislature that actually make the policy concerning our alcohol laws. I'm the one who enforces them. But I'm happy to join in, but they'll never do that because
it's a lot of money coming.
Oh yeah, no. The big beer company owns Annapolis lock, stock, and barrel. There are 3 unelected lobbyists named Steve and Nick and Jack who run the Economic Matters Committee. This is not a secret. Everybody knows it. Our controversy has caused them to make some concessions. So God bless the craft brewer and the brewing industry around the state. So it means thousands of jobs for Maryland. But they are now heading off in this crazy direction of stripping my police away. And what's going to happen from that? There's going to be thousands of financial fraud cases and tax refund cases where the state gets ripped off by criminals who, as soon as they hear that the comptroller's tax department is losing its enforcement division, they're going to flock to Maryland like locusts.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We will be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, and in the studio with me is the Comptroller of the State of Maryland, Peter Franchot. It's tax season, under a month away to tax day. One of the biggest complaints I'm sure you hear on a regular basis, I certainly hear and see, is that people can't wait to get out of Maryland because they're overtaxed, and especially for retirement, they just can't wait to leave Maryland.
Well, we are a high-tax state. There's no doubt about it, like New York and California and other places. But tend to be a well-run state. Governor Hogan has been, I think, a breath of fresh air in moderating the fiscal policies of the state. But older people who retire are attracted by states like Florida and Texas and other places that don't have income taxes, et cetera. I don't believe the outward migration is strictly due to the situation with taxes. We have a great state, strong infrastructure. We need to have taxes to pay for that. We should not raise taxes. I think what we need to do to keep our seniors here with us is what the governor's trying to do, which is give some reductions, targeted reductions that we can definitely pay for to different segments, veterans, whatever, public employees or something, so that we give them a small incentive to stay here because we need them. Mm-hmm. We need them as mentors. And so, but is the state's reputation as a high-tax state, is that a problem for some retirees? Yes. Can we reform it through good customer service and running our government in an honest, transparent, and competent fashion so that they're not frustrated by things like we can't even figure out the tax system? Yeah, and we try to do that. We answer phone calls within 40 seconds in our office with a live, friendly, professional person. Yeah, so if someone has a question, they should call 800-MD-TAXES. We have remote call centers set up around the state to make sure that people will get someone on the phone who can help them.
We were sitting around the dinner table last night, and I told my husband and daughter, who I'm interviewing today, and my daughter, 17 years old, wanted me to ask you, do you do your own taxes?
No, I have an accountant, thank God. And famously, when I got elected comptroller 13 years ago, my wife, who was surprised that I'd won, along with everyone else, said, "What does the comptroller do?" I said, "Dear, I am now in charge of the state's financial books." She looked back at me and she said, "God help the state of Maryland." So, no, I do not do my own taxes.
And who keeps the budget going in your house? It sounds like your wife?
My wife is now recently semi-retired, and she's taken over everything.
Your background is you went to law school.
Yes.
And it's not accounting, it's not money, it's law school.
I have 1,100 people who work for me,
that know numbers,
all of whom are experts, and they perform tremendous duties, and I simply am in charge of getting them the resources to do their job. And some of that we've been relatively successful with. We've got a $160 million new IT system being put in that's going to make the comptroller's office much more user-friendly as far as the internet, and a lot of younger people really need that. So it is a kind of a work in progress as far as...
Speaking of the internet and spending money in the state of Maryland, all of Maryland's websites are a little, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, they're dated.
Right, thank you. I was trying to be polite. Is that on the horizon?
Well, I don't know about the other agencies. I know we have what we call the 3 R's: respect the taxpayer, respond to the taxpayer, get results for the taxpayer, and part of that is a completely new internet face, and it's expensive, and we're going to phase it in, but I think it'll set the agency up for decades to come. The rest of the government obviously is run by the governor with the partnership of the legislature, and they're trying to bring everything into the 21st century, but there's a lot of room for improvement.
So what are your goals? What are your political aspirations? Is there something, your next step? You can go ahead and say it here. We'll keep the secret for you.
Yeah, get myself in trouble. No,
Do you want to run for governor?
First of all, I've been extraordinarily content and gratified and happy to be comptroller. And I'm going to concentrate like a laser on the next couple of years, improving our customer service and fleshing out some ideas about ethics reform and campaign finance reform. I'm always troubled by the PACs and the slates that, basically make decisions for the people. And so I'm particularly interested in economic development for small businesses. You mentioned my advocacy for craft brewers. That really is, all I want to do is level the playing field so that these wonderful Maryland businesses can compete with Budweiser and Miller. So that's kind of my agenda, and we'll see what happens a couple of years down the road. But I do have 1,620,264 friends out there, which was more votes than any other Maryland ever got.
So are you thinking about running for governor?
We'll take a look at it. And the more I kid my critics, because I say, gosh, guys, the more you poke me, the more, there may be reason to look more seriously at moving up. It's a difficult job, let's be honest. I mean, I'm a politician, and I've seen a lot of people run for higher office and obtain it, and it's It's harder than you think, not only to run and win, but it's harder to be the governor than people imagine. I happen to have a very positive relationship with Governor Hogan, so I get to see up close how stressful it is.
Comptroller Franchot, thank you very much for joining me today.
All the best.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.